Hello, readers and writers. I'm MJ, and today let's talk about the Goodreads Choice Awards. So, I know there has been a lot of talk about the controversy of the Goodreads Choice Awards, and I want to get into that specifically. So, the Goodreads Choice Awards have been going on for a very long time. Um, and every year, they have changed the categories. Um, I don't think they have ever really been very transparent in why they have chosen to change the categories. And of course, never knowing what categories are going to be on the Goodreads Choice Awards does have implications for authors. But I just want to say that this is not a new thing. It is constantly changing and morphing based upon, I guess, the whim of whoever's in charge of it for that year. I know there's specific controversy for 2023 because the middle grade and picture books categories have been removed. So, specifically, aging up the contest in terms of book levels. Um, and I guess I don't have specific things to say about that, except to say that the Goodreads choices are completely biased. They have never not been biased. There's always been problems with this award system, and I think it's important that we acknowledge it, even while we're talking about it. Um, Goodreads itself is potentially a problematic site to be using anyways. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying that it is owned by Amazon and it has not been had any really major updates in the entire time I've been using it, which is got to be like what 20 years now. I don't know, a very long time. Um Maybe not 20 years, but a lot. And so I think anytime you're not adapting and evolving, that the site itself is going to have problems. Um, and I just don't know if it has the money and the support for what Goodreads actually is, because a lot of the work that's done is actually done on a volunteer basis. Um, so that I think is also important to note that while we are um, like Amazon or Goodreads is generating so much revenue for these books that are more traditionally published, that they they do also rely a lot on volunteers for to make this site happen. Um, so the contest itself is problematic. I think in the years past, it did not like take into account any book that was published in October, November, or December, so 3 months out of the year. They have pushed it back slightly, so now the awards start in mid-November, which still puts any book that's published in November and December only being available to be in the awards for people that haven't read it or who were early ARC readers. And I know that in the past there were books that were on the Goodreads Choice Awards that had not released yet. Also, it is problematic to be putting up books that are like the ninth in a series as opposed to a book that's a first in the series. Because if you vote and you're not caught up on the series, you may not be necessarily voting for that book, you'd be voting for the entire series, which is very different than if you're voting with a standalone novel. So just Goodreads choice rewards themselves are problematic. They are not the catch-all of publishing, but it can be fun. just to look at that once you know that that's the gist of things. I will caveat to say that I do not use Goodreads on a regular basis. I pretty much only use it for NetGalley and indie reviews at this point. My main review and book organizer is Storygraph. Um, and so I still have this like morbid fascination with the Goodreads Choice Awards. I don't let it direct my reading anymore, but I do think it's very interesting to talk about what I have read and what who placed in this book popularity contest. So let's go take a look at the winners for 2023 and the breakdown of it in general. So the first category we have here is fiction. And for fiction, the winner is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And I have read this book and love it. It actually is probably going to be on one of my best books of the year list. I haven't written those yet because I haven't finished reading all the books for the year, but I definitely loved Yellowface. Thought it was an exceptional book, and I am a huge fan of R.F. Kuang in general. Although, caveat that I have not read the second two books in her series for no good reason, honestly. So I'm very excited to see this one win. I'm not unhappy with it personally. Let's go take a very quick look to see who it was going against. So for fiction, see, I haven't read any of these other books. So the only one I have read is Yellowface, and so I mean I would probably vote for Yellowface, but that doesn't say much for these other stories because I haven't read any of them. So if you have, and you thought that there's any that I should pick up, please let me know in the comments below. Alice Hoffman, The Invisible Hour, that sounds interesting. I haven't actually read any of her books either. So let's go back. And so next we have historical fiction. I am not a huge historical fiction reader. I've seen Wayward everywhere. So in terms of popularity, I'm not surprised that it won. But for historical fiction, I started Beyond That the Sea and DNF'd it, but I DNF'd it because I had personal issues with how gender was being described in the book, which is not necessarily going to be an issue that anyone else has. But yeah, I was not a huge fan of the relationship with gender in this book. And it was a little traumatic, honestly, for me. So, but yeah, so that's the only one I've even started. This is the one I've definitely heard the most about, so I'm not surprised Wayward won. I was thinking of picking up Wayward mostly just because I've seen it everywhere. So if you've read it, please let me know what you think. All right, mystery and thriller. I've seen The Handmaid's Secret again all over BookTube, so I'm not surprised to see that it has won. I also saw Riley Sager, the only one left. I know they are a very popular writer, so I wouldn't have been surprised if that one won either. But I have yet to pick up any of their books. I like thriller to a degree, and I have read some, but I don't read it enough. This is one on my TBR. S.A. Cosby, I read his original or his debut. I think it was his debut novel. That I can't remember the title of. And then I've heard reviews for All the Sinners Bleed, and I heard it's just as phenomenal as the original. So this is definitely on my TBR to read. And I've seen this one everywhere also. And am interested in potentially picking it up, but I have no idea what it's actually about. Um, but yeah, I haven't read any of these. I've read thrillers this year. In fact, I would say I've read more thrillers this year than I have in a while. And so I'm kind of surprised I have not read any of the nominees. But are any of these specifically ones that you think I should pick up and read? Oh, and then this goes into The Handmaid's Secret is again, it's a sequel. So I think that is very different than I don't know. I think most of these are probably standalones. So I don't know how that played a part. Okay, and is anyone surprised that Emily Henry won? Because even I have read a lot of Emily Henry's books, and by a lot I mean I think I've read 3 of the books she's read, which is for me fairly a lot when it comes to romance. I did choose not to pick up Happy Place just because I'm not in remotely a romance place, and there was nothing really that vibed with me. So um, I chose not to pick it up. I've heard mixed things about Ali Hazelwood, specifically that this book has, I think, a sexual aromatic rep in it, but it's not necessarily thoroughly fleshed out, which makes me honestly not want to pick it up. I know there is, well, I know, I am pretty sure there is an indie published book um, on this list for the romance. I'm not sure which one it actually is, because is it? It's probably not that, but is Lauren Asher indie published? I see this book all over um Bookstagram, so I'm not sure. But one of these, at least in the initial round, was self-published, and that's the first time a self published or indie published book has made it onto uh, the Goodreads Choice Awards. And so I'm not surprised that that happened in romance at all. That would be the category really for a breakthrough. But it's going to be no surprise that I have not read any of these, and I've only heard about a handful of them. And that's mostly because so much of book social media focuses a lot on romance books. But interesting to note 157,687 votes, which even compared to the runner up is nearly double. And romantasy. This is a new category of books that are ones that honestly I am very glad that they did not lump romantasy and fantasy together, because fantasy genre seems to be going a lot towards romantasy, and if you have been following me at all, it's been a little frustrating for me personally because it's just not my vibe. And it's absolutely no surprise that Fourth Wing won, and look at the votes for that 397,565 votes. Um, Rebecca Yarros has a lot of vibe going. Both a lot of people who are huge fans of Fourth Wings and a lot of people that either do not enjoy it and or have concerns with Rebecca Yarrow's stances on things. I don't think I will pick up Fourth Wing. I almost did just because of all the buzz, but I don't think it's a book for me. I do have an art copy of Assistant to the Villain, so I am going to try that one out and see. I've heard it's not very spicy, so I think I'm gonna see if that one works for me. Jennifer L. Armentrout is definitely not an author for me, but a lot of people really love her work, so I'm not surprised to see this book on here. Um, I I didn't realize the series was already up to book 5. Wow. Um, Alright, Zodiac Academies again. I've heard of that, not surprised. I am surprised that Any Cities by Charlie Holmberg is romantasy. Um, I think I might have this from a Kindle, the Kindle monthly deals. Uh, I'll have to check if this is what it is. I've read Charlie, and Holmberg, and I guess, yeah, there is clean fantasy. Well, okay, clean is probably not the correct word to use. There is non um, vivid relations. I don't know the best way to talk about it. Um, Without like using just the phrase, which might trigger YouTube. Um, but yeah, so I guess I could see where she falls in under romantasy. Just on Air is a book that came in a Lumen crate, so I do have this. I was really excited to read it until I realized it was romantasy, and then it has not been high priority on my list, honestly. But I want to get to it specifically because it's different, and I want to pick it up for that reason. Um, there's another uh, Jennifer L. Armentrout book. I didn't realize she was starting another series, although I suppose I'm not surprised. And the rest of these, honestly, I haven't heard of. So, um, that's also isn't a surprise for me. A fantasy, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to do science fiction and fantasy in a whole separate video where we can talk about them specifically. And let's go look at horror. So I have slightly ventured into horror this year. I am not surprised that Stephen King won, since he is the king of horror. And I think this book is back to one of his more core horror writing. Stephen King has become a little bit more speculative fiction, which has had me a little more interested in picking up some of his books because I really like his writing, and his speculative fiction books can be really good. But the darker kind, he's be very dark, and I don't handle it very well. So Holly is definitely one I don't plan on picking up. I think I've heard really good things about the Vampires of El Norte, although it's raving. I don't know. Um, I've seen Silver Nitrate around. I probably will pick this one up, although we'll see. I haven't actually read a Sylvia Marino Garcia book yet, although I own two of them, and I was recommended The Daughters of Dr. Moreau, and The Daughters of Dr. Moreau. I think I said that wrong. So I do want to make sure that it's not too graphic before I pick up more of her books, because I didn't realize they were actually considered horror. Um, but they sound very interesting, and I really do want to read them. I have read Kirsten White. They are a non-binary author that I have picked up, and I would get why their books are considered horror. Um, and I've read a couple of them, and definitely one I would consider reading as well because they're more like just like mind trip than like graphic for me, and I can handle that. I just have to be very careful about what is in the book. Um, but yeah, Mr. Magic is one that I have wanted to pick up, but have not yet, and most of these I haven't heard of, which again is not very surprising considering. All right, and then young adult fantasy, I think I'm gonna do with fantasy and science fiction, so we'll do that as one separate video. Let's do so young adult fiction. I'm not surprised Ali Hazelwood won because obviously she's a very well-known author, but I personally have never heard of this book, Check and Mate. Um, So I am probably missing it, which is actually great because I am definitely not the target demographic for it. Um, Warrior Girl Unearthed is one on my TBR. I read Firekeeper's Daughter last month and loved it. So this is the sequel. And if anything, I would have wanted this book to win. Um, because I've heard it's as good as Firekeeper's Daughter, and therefore should win. Um, uh, Becky Albertalli is another author that I write, or is another author that I read, even though she writes a lot of YA fiction, because she does do LGBTQIA rap. Specifically, her book on aromanticism was one of the best aromantic books that I've read. Well, aromantic asexual, and it's the one that kind of like made me realize that I do label it as such. Um, I think I've seen this around, but it looks really cool. I might pick that one up. Um, I have read Never Ever Getting Back Together was fine. Um, I think a lot of people will really enjoy it. I think it's one I got from Rainbow Crate. And surprisingly enough, I haven't read most of these. I think I read too much YA for my preference, but a lot of these still are ones that haven't really come to my attention. I do love how queer this selection is. That's excellent. And now if we can just move this up into the adults, I think we'll be headed in the right direction. All right, so now debut novel, Wayward is the winner here. So I'm not sure what that says. Ink Blood Sister Scrab. I don't think I've heard of that. Pineapple Street. That was in another category. But I can't remember which. Maybe historical fiction also. For J, I haven't heard of a lot of that. Beyond That, the Sea. That's the book I DNF'd. I keep my exoskeletons to myself. That looks very interesting. The cover looks a lot like a different series by a different author. But interesting. It's just the brief description makes me kind of want to pick that up. So a lot of these I haven't heard of. So either like I'm just not in the thick of things, or which is possible, or a lot of people haven't heard of these either because the votes are kind of low considering like all the other books. So interesting. All right, so I was really interested in nonfiction. They usually have a science nonfiction, and I like pulling a lot of books that I've missed from there. But they do not this time, so they only have nonfiction and memoir and autobiography, which is putting a lot of different types of books together to vote against. So this one, Poverty by America, looks very interesting and is definitely one I want to pick up. This one, again, less so. I don't necessarily need to read a book on butts. Art Thief, interesting, but not necessarily my jam. Same thing as How to Find It, Keep It, and Let It Go. That looks like more of a romance self-help book, which is like, again, comparing all of these different books together. I have seen Outlive and have zero intention of picking it up. Doppelganger, I have not seen this. This is definitely one I would be very interested in. So that's probably going to get added to my list to read. Um, And Honor Best Behavior looks like a book about the history of women. Definitely one that would be very interesting. And then we have The Creative Act, A Way of Being. Interesting. That would be one I'd want to take a different look into to see if it would be one I would connect with. It looks like it may be very music focused. Um, Trails of the Lost, Missing Hikers on the PCH. Fascinating. That might freak me out a little bit, but I still think I might pick that one up. How Far Light Reaches. This is interesting because combining light and sea creatures, but also looking at the nature and how like okay, so this is actually a big thing that I have done. Like, I love watching nature documentaries, but it's so obvious that they're very biased. And to start seeing some of these books actually take a broader perspective, away from the bias that's built into the field. So yeah, definitely interested in how far the light reaches. Opinions. Interesting. I don't know. Roxane Gay sounds very familiar of a name, but I'm not sure I've ever read another book of theirs. Very high ratings for those that have rated it. You sound like another good one about looking at femininity from a biological perspective. I probably wouldn't be as inclined to pick that up. I'd look into it first to make sure there weren't triggers for me personally. Um, oh, How the Blood of the Congo Powers Our Lives. That is one I definitely need to add to my TBR, because that's something I obviously need to learn more about. I am a little surprised that some of the books on Palestine aren't on here, but maybe none of them actually released this year. I thought so, but maybe it was last year that they came out. Hidden Potential, The Science of Achieving Great Things. I'm sure this is a lot about flow and such, which could be interesting, but it probably is a little more of a self-help as opposed to a little harder science that I prefer. Ultra processed people, definitely interested in food and that. So this would definitely be one that I would be interested. Monsters. Huh, I have no idea what that one's about. Punished for Dreaming How School Reform Harms Black Children and How We Heal. Very interesting. Definitely one that I'd want to pick up. And Never Finished. So wake up call. I don't know about this. It seems a little more self-helpy, even though it says it's not. Um, but it's one I'd look into more. And then The Good Life, The Scientific Lessons on Happiness. I'd look into this one, because I find research on happiness fascinating, because happiness doesn't actually make us happy. And then, ironically, right next to it is another book on art and science of getting happier. I would be less likely, I think, to look into this one. Just the difference of how they reframe this is why one would be more interesting for me than another. And this is why one of the things I want to say is like, yeah, the Goodreads Choice Awards are not the end all be all for books, and which books you should pick up. But sometimes it's nice to just see some of the books that you missed through the year, and which ones you might be interested in. I'm going to go through these a lot faster because I'm less interested in them. A memoir and autobiography. I have heard about the Britney Spears one. I don't know if I'm going to read it. Spare, I am not reading Prince Henry's. Elliot Page, I did read his and highly recommend it. Loved it. Definitely not picking up Paris, the memoir. I don't know most of these. Well, I mean, I know like who Pamela Henderson is and Jill Duggar is, but I probably would not pick them up. Okay, I have seen this one, but that's only because I just want to say that I named my book In Between before this book, The In Between, was released. So I've only seen it because it's so similar to my book title. Um, but it doesn't make me want to actually pick it up. So, um, Hijab Budge Blues. This definitely is one I would probably want to look more into, just based on the title alone. Um, I got this while you were out from the publisher. I'm not sure who the publisher is. It may be one that I'm boycotting. But eventually I would like to pick it up. Um, and then The Man of Two Faces. I don't know this is either, but that was one I would want to look into more. Definitely the memoirs could be a little bit more queer, in my opinion. I'm not surprised that there's a lot of famous people here. Um, History and biography, this is not my jam, really, but there are a few on here that I would like to pick up. This one I really has interested me. I saw that, and definitely this is high on my list of ones to pick up. I would want to look more into this one. Honestly, I don't think I've read a lot of uh, nonfiction on Martin Luther King. I did learn a fair bit about him in classes, but it'd be interesting to take to a new like I haven't read anything for a while, so it'd be a good thing for me to do. Um Interesting. Um this is I don't know about that one. Um the Eight World Plagues going infinite. So the one I do want to read that's a history is recently came out. It isn't even on this list, and it's like the history of fascism or something. And it isn't even on here, which is ironic, because it's from a very well-known journalist. So, yeah, I'm not interested in that. So there are a few history books that I think would be good for me to pick up. The Unwhitewashed Story of America. Okay, that actually looks great. Look at the ratings on that too. So again, see the value of coming in and just kind of seeing what's out is out there. Humor books, I do want to pick up Leslie Jones books for sure. She's hilarious. Um, and she just does like she does the comedy hard edge, but like gets it right, in my opinion. And so I just really appreciate that. Another one, I read the first book of by Amber Ruffin this year finally, and definitely plan on getting the second book, or at least reading the second book. I am trying to count or stop having so many paper copies. I'm just out of room, but I definitely want to read that. Um, the rest of these I haven't really heard of so much. They would be hit or miss if I would pick them up. Um, I don't know who this is. Um, but it definitely ones that I would at least look into more. But for sure, Leslie Jones and the World Record Book of Racist Stories are two that's already on my TBR. And so there we go. There is an overview of the Goodreads Choice Awards for 2023. Do you agree that they are correct? I mean, I guess I didn't really go specifically over the winners of the last three categories. I'm not surprised Britney Spears won. That was everywhere. I am a little surprised this won over some of the other choices, and absolutely surprised that being Henry won, but I guess I shouldn't be. Um, yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know which books you think that I should pick up that I haven't already. And check out my next video. I'll be specifically going into science fiction and fantasy. As always, keep reading, keep writing, and until next time.